Hello, everybody. Welcome to In This Corner, the podcast of Buck 88, boxing's biggest names, biggest stories, biggest fights, greatest memories and moments. We do it all with the boxing writer, author, CompuBox counter, and historian, lovable lad from friendly West Virginia, Lee Groves. How you doing, Lee?
Doing well, and there's a specific reason you called me a lad, isn't there?
You're, as Ali would say, you're not as dumb as you look, or
I'm
would have
pretty
said.
sure.
He said that
Yeah.
to me even as a little boy. Yes, because, well, you know what? Tell, why am I wearing this? Why did I call you a lad?
Well, because this show is going to take a definitive Irish turn, and our guest today is Hall of Famer Barry McGuigan.
The Clones Cyclone.
Yes,
And,
indeed.
yeah, I'm happy to have him on. I've interviewed him before. I know you have as well. Finished his record inside the squared circle, I believe, at 32-3 with 28 KOs, and won the featherweight championship from another Hall of Famer, Eusebio Pedroza. We'll talk about that fight, his career, his beginnings, where he's at now. And you never know if there'll be another Irish surprise dropping by. You just never know. But we'll get it all underway in this corner. Buck 88, Barry McGuigan, right after this. Back on In This Corner of the podcast, a Buck 88, and happy to be having with us a guy that I've admired for a long, long time. Those of you who've been in the sport of boxing for a long, long time will know this man, and I'm sure you've enjoyed his exploits. We head out to Ireland, and we are joined by the Hall of Famer, the Clones Cyclone, former featherweight champion of the world, Barry McGuigan. How you doing, Barry?
I'm great, Smithy. I'm great. And by the way, although I am Irish, very much so, I'm actually in the southeast of England. We are in a place called just outside Whitstable, just 62 miles southeast of London. And I've lived here since 1989. But I'm back and forth all the time. We'll be going back half a dozen times, would you believe, to Ireland over the next 2 months. So back and forth for family birthdays. And so my mum, God be good to her, will be 90 on the day before my world title fight, which was the 8th of June 1985. So she's going to be 90 on the 7th of June. So I'm gonna miss the day of her actual birthday, because I've got Chris Billum Smith fighting down in Bournemouth against a very tough kid whose name defeats me at the moment. It'll come back to me, and then the next day I'm going to fly over to see my mom.
Well, my mom, Louise Gary, I'll send her a copy of the show, and my family, because I'm Irish and Lebanese, my family's from County Cork.
There you go.
That area.
You know where in Cork from?
I'm not that I'd have to go to mommy to ask. But part of my, my
DNA.
television show In This Corner has been on the air 22 years, and we're working on In This Corner 2.0. And what I'm trying to do with 2.0 is to go to the places of the world that I haven't gone and interview people like you're on that. You're on my hit list, and hopefully, if I am able to pull it off and do it there, we'll pull you from where you're at now back to Ireland, and that's where I'm going to begin this.
Yeah. Well, my real name is Finbar.
Finbar. Patrick McGuigan.
That's right. Now, Finbar is the patron saint of Cork, is Saint Finbar.
Ah,
so
remember, Lee, I was talking about his name because I said
go.
if it wasn't the Clone Cyclone, it could have been fighting Finbar. I kind of like that. It has a.
Or
It has
the Irish is Fionn Barra. So
Okay.
Finbar in Irish. So anyway, yeah, love the name. I always have done. Yeah, we've got a lot in common. And Cork, love Cork. County Cork is like one of my favorite places in Ireland. You've never been there before,
No,
Smithy,
and
no?
I and
You
I
gotta
and I
go.
look forward to going, and that's where we'll begin. I'm glad you kind of set it up because before I flip it to Lee, who's prepared some fantastic questions as he always does, I want for younger fans who don't know about your upbringing there, take us back to when and how you got in to boxing.
Right. Well, I lived in a small town, right on the border. Like, I mean, you go 500 yards outside the town and you're in the north, right in the middle of all the hell and all the trouble of the 1970s. I was born in 61. And by the time I was a teenager, by 68, all of the troubles had started. They kicked off, and it was very, very nasty and very, very hostile, and great tension all around. My father was a professional musician, and my mom and him had bought this gross big old Victorian Edwardian house on the Diamond in Clones back in the early 1960s, 1963. And Dad was a traveling musician with a band, and Mum was ran the shop with the help of her father and any of us that were able to help her at the time. We had 8 children in the house. I was the third eldest. I'm now the oldest because my poor brother Dermot sadly is gone, and so is my sister Sharon. So I'm now the oldest. I got into boxing in 1970. What was it? 1970, 1973, 74. I went to a local. It wasn't so local. It was a place called the Wattlebridge Amateur Boxing Club. And I went out there, and there was a guy called Porrick McCaffrey who was one of the boxers. He was also a coach, and there was another guy called Tom Conlon who was the main guy, the driving force behind it. Anyway, the club sort of ran down and stopped, and so I moved from there to Smithborough Amateur Boxing Club, and they were just starting again. They had been going in the 60s and stopped and then restarted. And it was been run by ostensibly by a guy called Frank Mulligan. He had the support of a whole load of guys on the committee and that, but he was the main driving force behind it. And I won my first Ulster and Irish title in 1977. And we travelled up the north during all that horribly bad times, and went, and that was my provincial title. So I won my first. I had to win that before I could go to the All Ireland, and it was 1977. I won the best boxer of the tournament, and I won the national championships, and I stopped 3 of my 5 opponents in the last semi-final, quarter-final, and final. Yeah, and that was my first. That was when people started taking notice of me. I then the following year won the Ulster Seniors at the age of 16, and I knocked out a guy called Shawnee Russell, who was the previous Ulster Senior champion. Nowadays, you're not allowed to take part in senior boxing unless you're 17. So I had won the Ulster Seniors, knocked the guy out, then got picked won the Irish Seniors that year, got picked for the Commonwealth Games, because I was also eligible, although I boxed in Ulster, although I was from the south. Both of my parents' families were both from the north, and that qualified me to box in the Commonwealth Games. And I won the gold medal that year out in Edmonton, Canada, and I was only a kid. And so the Harry Carpenter, who was the big name in BBC, got to know me, and he was a big fan of mine. And then it was just from there. I went on to won a couple of multinational gold medals. I went in for the European under-19s, and I fought. It was done sort of back to front. The World under-19s were in Japan in November 1979, and in 1980 there was the European under 19 championships, and I fought the gold medalist in the world championship, a guy called Yuri Gladyshev, and I beat him from here to Cork and back, and they gave him the decision. I was really, really upset and hurt about that. Then I went home, sort of licked my wounds, and then straight back into camp to get ready for the Moscow Olympics. I captained the Irish Olympic boxing team in Moscow. Again, got to the quarterfinal, just the penultimate fight before the medal stages, and again got a lousy decision. And I was at that stage getting frustrated with boxing, amateur boxing, and then I had that was at the end of my sort of bad decisions. I said that's it, and I turned pro in early 1981.
Before we go to the pros, you know, you said you had a lot in common with me. There's somebody else that you have a lot in common with, and because of the way his career went, and he might be popping in on us in just a second. Let's see if I can, through the wizardry of Zoom electronics, let this person in, and let's see if this has happened. In this corner of the podcast, we are chatting with Barry McGuigan, and we are now joined by the Pocket Rocket.
Wayne, how you doing?
This is just a surprise for you. It's a surprise for you.
Good man. It's really great to see you. I was looking through the record books today, and somebody was communicating with me and they were saying, you know, they were saying to me, you know, what sort of it was something about what Irish sort of fighters went on to win the world title. So I was talking about you, but I also mentioned, and I'll tell you what it was. It was a good friend of mine he's a massive boxing fan. We keep sort of chatting to each other and whatever. And he is a guy called Jerry Mitchell, and I fought him many years ago, right? And he said, you know, a lot of the amateurs could never carry their power through to the pros. And I said, yes, because, you know, having to sit down on your shots, and you're going to get hit an awful lot more in the pro game. Yep. And I was we're talking about Michael Caruso, and I said, here's the Olympic gold medalist. And he did nothing as a pro. And he never beat anybody. He never won any titles of any. And he just, you know, because he was a powder puncher. He didn't have any power. And, you know, he didn't have a great chin either. And so we were talking about
but he was a great amateur, which is a difference.
Amazing.
Great amateur and a pro. So you have to carry your punch power through.
That's the interesting thing, Wayne, because I was trying to explain that. I was saying, you know, the significance of having power, having a good chin. Well, like, I mean, the Pocket Rocket had the best chin in boxing, incredible chin. And that's what allows you to be able to stand in there with all those top fighters and, you know, battle them right up to the point of, you know, the only ones you lost were against the absolute.
But Eddie, you had to learn the defense, and then I worked with you. Remember when I fought up in Boston? Remember you trained me for a week, couple of days. Do you remember?
I remember well.
But do you remember getting that defense, working the defense?
Wayne, you're getting old yourself, Wayne, but you're a little you're a little young. What did watching Barry McGuigan, watching his career do to motivate you?
I love Barry when he won the world title back in '86 against Pedrosa. I was a kid who couldn't afford to go to his fights. You know, I was unemployed and I couldn't go to the fights and just left school. And but I was sitting watching TV. Everybody was sitting tuned into the TV then back then. You only had a few channels, and just rooting for Barry just to come through and win the world title against a legend like Yusuf Pedrosa. It was unbelievable. And his first and second defenses as well. And then the Stevie Cruz fight, you know, you're up in the middle of the night cheering him on, and who fights in 115 degrees? Only a crazy Irishman.
Well, and you know about it because you live here in Vegas.
Here 33 years.
Yeah.
but the interesting thing is because of Matt Tinley, who worked with Wayne, we knew each other very well anyway. But his style of fighting, I mean, you just couldn't take your eyes off him. He was perpetual motion, moved his head so well. You got in on top of you, and you know, we all have sort of weaknesses and strengths, but the heart that Wayne McCullough had was unbelievable. And when you think of the bantamweights and super bantamweights now, he just would go straight through them. And that's the truth. You were at a time when there were so many talented kids out there.
That's what you were like too. You were just come forward non-stop, could bang with either hand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love to be aggressive. You know, I love to be aggressive, but I often say to myself, stamina. When I talk about stamina, you would have been far better, McCullough, over 15 rounds.
No, I would have.
15 rounds, absolutely, 100%.
No, you're right. 15 rounds suited me better. It really would have, because
you'd have had no defeats, Wayne, if you'd have fought 15 rounds.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there, definitely. But I'm sad they took 15 rounds away.
Yeah,
so would have suited me perfectly. And today, you're right, be a lot of different champions at 15 rounds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see so many of them who just get by, and you can see the flagging after 10 rounds. But that was, God, you had genetics incredible. What's your heart rate now? Do you ever take it? Do you ever take it out? You still run and do all that stupid running?
Every day, hold the mitts for about 5 hours a day.
Right, great.
His daughter Winona does my hair, and every time I go over there, he's out running. And whatever the temperature, it could be 90 or 110. He's out doing his 5 or 6 miles, and then he comes in and he's nice enough to sit down and drink some coffee with me. But I decked him twice in sparring. I just want you to know that. I decked him.
That's not true. Not true. You must have clipped him.
All you got to do to Smitty is a little touch in the ribs. Just touch his ribs.
Yeah, I do.
It's over, and it's over. But here, Barry, I'm on here. You're my hero. I was happy just to say hello to you. I got to run on the gym.
Thank you,
I know
Wayne.
you got to go back to it, mate. Listen, congratulations on all you've achieved, mate.
We'll be in touch.
I know you're going to produce a whole. You're going to produce a whole load of champions. So get back to it.
Thank you, Wayne.
Take care,
champions.
Thanks, Wayne.
Bye bye.
Appreciate it. All right, with that, the Pocket Rocket joins us. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back. And Lee Groves is ready to toss some right hands and a few jabs at Barry McGuigan right after this. Back on In This Corner of the podcast, Buck 88, with former featherweight champion of the world, Hall of Famer, Barry McGuigan, as I flip it to Lee Groves.
Well, earlier you made mention of your appearance in the 1980 Moscow Olympics. You won your first fight, but you were eliminated by the guy who ended up losing to the eventual gold medalist. Right. Tell us about your Olympic experience, from the opening ceremony to the competition to any other memories that spring to mind.
Well, I'll tell you what it was like, Lee. I mean, when I went to, it's interesting. When I went to Moscow, and when I went to Rimini for the European juniors, and when I went to, Toronto, Edmonton, and you've traveled all around the world, and we boxed in the multi-nations. And then I remember there was a multi-nations in Holland, and we were on this bloody barge. And there was like 52 countries that came in for this multinational tournament. And what I always seem to remember is I remember the smell of the place. Smell is a very overpowering strength within human beings. Your sense of smell, and I noticed that in Moscow, there was a very chemical smell in the place. Very sort of like TCP, cleaning up the kitchen and that sort of stuff. It was a very strong chemical smell. We had Huey Russell, who won a bronze medal that year. Poor Huey passed away last year. He won the flyweight bronze medal, lost to the Hungarian who won the gold medal in the final. And Rudy Fink was the East German who won the 57 kilo weight division. And the guy I lost to was a guy called Winfred Kabunda, and Kabunda lost controversially to Rudy Fink, who won the gold medal.
Right.
So with these decisions, it was just so infuriating and so annoying, because tournaments like that meant everything to you. You dedicated your whole life, and you prepare, and got your whole town and your whole county and your province and your whole country behind you. So it was very, very disappointing, very sad for me, and because in those days, controversial decisions were there were so many. The vast majority of decisions were controversial, and so and
Very
people
political as well.
And very political, and what was going on in Afghanistan and all of that back in 1980. And there was a lot of the African countries that were supporting the Russians and vice versa. And so you just never knew whether whether you were going to get a decision. Even if you won the fight, you never knew you were going to get it. Anyway, so that was by the by. So I went home sort of licking my wounds, and I said, right, I'm going to have another couple of amateur fights, and then I'm going to turn pro. And I sort of planned to turn pro in early 1981. And I just got married at the end of 1980. I got married at the end of 1981, but I knew that we were going to get married soon. I wanted to marry my childhood sweetheart, who I grew up with, and we're still married. Sometimes we were having a bar.
I think she probably deserves a medal for that, or a belt.
Exactly. She definitely deserves a medal for putting up with me all this time. So we've lost a lot of family members over the years, and it's been very tough, but she's a phenomenal girl, and I'm very, very fortunate to have married Sandra Maliff was her maiden name, and Sandra McGuigan now, of course. And so we've had a lot of tough times. We've had some amazing times, but a lot of sadness too over the years. But she's solid as a rock, and she's been with me all this time. And we now have 7 grandchildren, so I'm slightly ahead of you. And I hope that the boys haven't drawn up the drawbridge, or in which case, I hope the girls haven't drawn up the drawbridge, because they make the decisions, don't they? So the wives do. Anyway, so we've got 7 kids, and 5 boys and 2 girls, and they're absolutely lovely. And I live for them. And for example, tomorrow I've got to go and babysit, and then on Friday I'm going to go in and watch the boys sparring. We've got a Libyan guy called Malik Sanad, who's a light heavy super middleweight guy. Only 1 defeat on his record, lost to Dimitri Bivol, but what a fighter, and a knockout artist too. So tremendous fighter. So I'm going to watch him spar on Thursday morning, and. And I like to go in and watch Adam Azim is coming through as well, and he's as my dad used to say, he's not a kick in the arse away from fighting for the world title himself. And so it's a busy gym. We've got Chris Billum Smith fighting a Canadian guy in a final eliminator, then to fight Jai Apataya for the cruiserweight title again. He won the cruiserweight title against Lawrence Okoli, who used to be with us a couple of years ago. And so it's a busy gym, lots of things happening. We've got 2 female world champions, and of course Ellie Scottney just won the undisputed super bantamweight title, and she's just told all the governing bodies that she's no longer going to make 122. She's going up to 126. So she's very exciting. Caroline Dubois, who is hoping to get a showdown with Alicia Baumgardner. So it's a busy gym, and lots of things happening. And
well, you mentioned your dad. Your dad, and I know Lee has some really specific questions about your brilliant professional career. Lee?
Yeah, you turned pro during a time when Northern Ireland was experiencing the troubles, as you made mention. But during the process of turning pro and building your reputation, you were seen by both sides as a figure of peace.
Yeah.
Describe the process by which you became that unifying figure, and how did both sides come to accept you as that unifying force?
Well, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I was an affable, nice guy. I got on with people. I'm a Catholic and I married a Protestant. And
Right.
although we were south of the border, all of my boxing took place north of the border. And I lived just outside Clones because I had to live in the north in order to fight for the British title and defend my
Right.
titles, etc., etc. And you know the way you do it over here, Lee and Smithy, is you win the British title, you win the Commonwealth title, you win the European title, and you know so that's used to be the way it was. And then you, if you're lucky enough, if you're good enough, battle your way towards winning a world title.
Mhm.
And so that's the way it was. But for me, we had hell going on at the time in Northern Ireland. As I say, lived in Clones. The interesting thing is the GAA, which is the Gaelic Athletic Association, they have their Ulster final in Clones, and it's one of the best pitches in the whole country in our hometown. And so that was always a big occasion every time, every sort of summer in each year. Whether it was County Monaghan, which is my county, or not, whether we qualified, it was always, whether it was Tyrone or Derry or whatever, or Antrim, they would always play in Clones. So anyway, I always felt when the troubles were going down and there was a lot of sadness and a lot of bitterness and just a lot of hate and trouble, and the army were there, and you went over the border and you had to go through a checkpoint, and so it was a lot of animosity and a lot of ill will. And I just thought to myself, well, the one thing I'm going to make sure to do is I'm never ever going to get involved in any of that stuff. If anything, I want to offer myself as a peace, somebody of peace, even though I was in the business of fighting.
Mhm.
I didn't need to be I didn't need to be aggressive or one-sided, and I was from a mixed marriage, and I wanted to send out a message to everybody and say, look, we can all live together, we can all live peacefully. And you know, eventually they got
And
it. But
they
right,
actually had a saying like that:
yeah,
"Leave the fighting to McGuigan." I love
that's
that
correct.
saying. That
That,
that
that,
was
that was exactly right, Smithy. And you know that was that. You know, you had to live in Northern Ireland to appreciate that saying, because you know what I mean by that. And I'm not trying to be smarmy or cheeky or anything else. It was terrifying in those days, and people were dying every single day of the week from
Mhm.
different sides of the community. And I just thought, Christ Almighty, you can cut this atmosphere with a knife. So when I fought, it was as if it was a release valve for people to come and support me and actually be with the opposite side, be with the Catholics would mix with Protestants, and they would be together in my fight. And I was acutely aware of that, and I said, I am not going to do anything to alienate people. If any, what I want to do is bring people together, and that was my modus operandi. And I knew that I could really fight, and let's be honest, they wouldn't have been there to support me if I couldn't fight, and they knew I was pretty special, and I was going through at a fast rate, and I was knocking guys out, and I had a 87% knockout record when I finished my career. But I was going through the guys fairly quickly, and they were getting excited about it, and they were traveling with me, and then of course we got Pedrosa, who was a phenomenal champion, and we had to get in a position to where I was with the WBA. I was in a position to be. They're going to accept me as a mandatory defense rather than a voluntary. But we
Right.
still had to do business with him, and he said he would come and box in this neck of the woods because he didn't have a TV deal in America. And he was one of these globetrotters, as you know, with his
Yeah.
record. You guys are proper. He fought all over the world, 19 world title defenses,
Yeah.
phenomenal. And I knew that we could probably get him to this neck of the woods, but we wouldn't get him to Belfast. He wasn't going to come to Belfast. He made that abundantly clear to Barney Eastwood, my manager, who went and sat down with Santiago del Rio, his manager, and eventually they agreed terms, and that I would fight him in London, and I would fight him on June the 8th, 1985. And so we brought half of Northern Ireland and Ireland with us. It was
Team
phenomenal.
wise.
I boxed in a place called Queens Park Rangers football ground, and it was right next to the BBC, which was the headquarters. And as Lee mentioned, and you too, Smithy, that there were only 4 channels in the UK. There was a BBC One, ITV, BBC Two, and then Channel 4 was sort of knocking on the door to get in, but still wasn't available to everybody else. So, we had huge audiences in those days. And when I fought that night against Pedrosa, we got an audience of 18.7 million people. That is, that is incredible. You think about it, almost 19 million people watched that fight. There had never been a bigger audience before, and there'll never be again, because we've got now 500 channels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there'll never be, which I'm thrilled about. But
what do you remember? What do you remember about that fight? Take us through. I think you knocked him down, I believe, in round 7. I think 15-round fight against a guy that's a Hall of Famer like yourself.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that fight?
Well, he's 5'9.5" for a featherweight. So he was very tall for a featherweight, and he got great range. But he was also a master at fighting at close range, and loved bolo punches and left hooks in the body. So I knew that I was going to have to be on him, and so what I tried to do was take away his ability to keep the fight in the center of the ring. So I had to be relentless, which meant that, the next day my neck was as sore as hell because, he hit me with loads of uppercuts and right hands. But that was a risk worth taking. I knew I had to put him under pressure so that he would gas out and I would set a pace so we came in, and it was live on television on the BBC. So we had to come out at a specific time. I don't think I walked to the ring until about 20 to 10 at night. And there had been a whole undercard, except Davy McCauley, the world flyweight champ, who later became the world flyweight champ. He was on the undercard and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I remember the last week of it. We came in about sort of 4 days beforehand, and we stayed in West London, and he was staying in the Dorchester on Hyde Park, and it was all very expensive, and he was doing his last bit of training, and he was big for the weight, so he had to watch his weight in the last few days. And so I was the same. I was pretty crammed into the 126 pounds. I was big for it. So anyway, we got on the scales, both made the weight. And these are the days of where you weighed in at sort of 12 o'clock in the day, and you had 4 or 5 hours to get some grub into you, and then get your head down for a bit of a kip before the fight. And so I got to the arena around about 8 o'clock, and I was walking into the ring itself at 20 to 10, and Pedrosa, I went in first because I was the challenger, and then the crowd it was deafening. You couldn't hear yourself think. It was so loud and noisy. And then Pedrosa came in, and then there was the national anthems, and then my anthem was Danny Boy. And because I picked Danny Boy because that is, believe it or not, that is the Northern Ireland anthem. So it's not God Save the Queen, it is Danny Boy. I don't think it was back then, or it might have been, but it is now. And so then Phil Coulter, the great songwriter, and knew my father very well. He wrote his own rendition of Danny Boy, and Dad sang it so well, and he used to say, "There's not much else I can do, but I can actually." I can, get the people going and make it a really good soulful version of Danny Boy. And it was great. And I never listened to it, Smithy and Lee. I blanked it out because it was an emotional song. And the last thing I could do was be emotional on a night when I need to be at my best. So I would blank it out, and I would just I used to say a little prayer to myself repeat the same thing over and over again. And so I blank out the song.
Do you remember what that prayer was?
Yes.
What was it?
Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. Ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen. And that was it. And I go do it over and over again, so that I would blank out the surround sound, so that I just could focus on what I was doing, just concentrate. So he got out of the blocks brilliantly well, ran into the center of the ring as if he was going to push me back. And so I stayed there, and I got my head jabbed off for the first couple of rounds. But then I slowly applied the pressure, and I was beginning to get him. What you do as a pressure fighter is you don't just attack. You force your opponent to make mistakes. That's what you do. That's what a really good attacking fighter does. It's not just about throwing shots and being aggressive. You have to do it with guile and smarts. Keep your head moving, and we were joking with Wayne there and that sort of stuff. If anything, he didn't move his head enough, but he had such an amazing chin. He didn't need to, and so I knew that I had to move my head, and in order to get this guy, if he's going to hit me with a jab and he's 5'9", I'm not, even though I had a 5'10" reach, it was only 5'6.5", but I had a 5'10" reach. So that was the way nature made me. So I was lucky I could out jab most of the guys. But when I was moving my head, I was more difficult to hit, and there was a better chance that I could hit him. So I started to force him back, and 4 rounds into the fight, I was already forcing him back and putting him on the back foot. And then I hurt him in round 6, and then in round 7, I nailed him with the right hand. And I kept jabbing to the body, jabbing to the head, jabbing to the body, and then I would go with the right hand as if I'm going to the body. I would show it as if I'm going to the body, and then halfway through it, I would turn it up to the head, and he fell for it. His left hand went down, and he pulled back, and I nailed him with the right hand. But I didn't hit him on the chin. I hit him on the cheekbone. Mm-hmm. But it was forceful enough to drop him, and he got back up again. But I knew once he get up, Lee and Smithy, I knew, you look into the race, you know that he wasn't badly hurt. He was stunned, but he wasn't badly hurt. So I proceeded to try and get rid of him. And there was only about, I think, 35 seconds left in the round when he got to his feet again. But I couldn't get rid of him because he wasn't that badly hurt. And he was clever, smart, and he grabbed me as long as he couldn't held on to me. And it was Stanley Christodoulou, the South African referee. He was very fair, and to be honest. But, and he knew he allowed him to hold on to me for a while to clear his head. But, that was the beginning of the turning of the fight for me. After that, I started taking control. He was more apprehensive. He was less willing to exchange with me in case he would be nailed with that right hand again. I didn't hit him enough to the left hooks to the body because I had a wicked left hook to the body, but he was too clever for that. He put his hand up to block the left hook to the head and then put it down to block to the body. A lot of guys throw a combination and go left jab, right hand, and left hook to the body, and then left hook to the head. Whereas I used to reverse it. I used to go left jab, right hand, left hook to the head, and then I whip in the left hook to the body, and then the
that
left
gets
hook
their
to the
arm
head.
up. Yeah, good move.
And so I go 1, 2, 3, and they get their hands up, and then they create a small space for me, and I'd rip in because all you had was a 6-inch square, and if you didn't get that shot in, it was wasted. But I was a terrific body puncher with that left hook, and if I hit people to the body, all it took was one good shot, and then I used to stand on them, right? I go whoop, and then I'd be in close, and I give them a little shove, and they go oh, all the air was out of their system.
I would do it.
But I never hit him once with that left hook. He was too clever for me. He was really clever. So I tried several times. I hit him right hands, but I never hit him with the left hook. He was too good for that. But anyway, that was the beginning of the fight where it changed and went in my favor. Hurt him again in the 9th. Had him in desperate trouble in the 13th, but couldn't finish him. And then won it on a unanimous decision. And
after that fight, what did first off, a couple of questions about it. After what did it feel like in that crowd, in that atmosphere, Daddy did the anthem, and the
Mm.
new
Yeah,
featherweight champion of the world. What
yeah.
can you still recall that?
Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday, it was phenomenal. And then everybody, and probably 5,000 people had left the stadium already, because there was very little time for them to get to the pub and get something to drink before the bar closed. So they all figured I'd won it, and that's how confident they were. But still, there were probably 20,000 people in the arena when it was announced, and they just went crazy, and it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal, a lifetime's achievement, if you like, something that I had worked for my whole life. And my amateur career had been disappointing simply because I didn't win the Olympic gold medal, and I wasn't happy winning something less than that, because I
Yeah.
really I was always somebody who was a high achiever and wanted to be the best I could be, because I worked too hard to be anything less than that.
You can just feel when you talk to you about your empathy. And I don't exactly remember the post-fight interview, but I do remember at some point, maybe it was the post-fight interview or in an interview after, where you brought up a situation with young Ali,
That's right.
something that
That's right.
happened earlier in your career. You beat him. He slipped
Yeah.
into a coma. I
Yeah.
still can't get I think he might have passed away officially months later after
Yes.
your fight,
5
but
months later.
that was on
But
your,
I was
that
on my
was on,
mind, and I was on my mind on the build up to the fight, and I said, if I do this, and there was a lot of ifs and buts and maybes. There was nobody sure, because Pedrosa had beaten so many great fighters and had traveled all around the world and fought in places like Papua New Guinea and South America and Italy and everywhere. He just fought everywhere, and nobody, he was never perturbed. He was never put off. He just put on one good performance after another. So there was no guarantee that I was going to win it. I believed I could win it, and I 100% that I would win the title. And I knew that if I did do that, I was going to dedicate it, because I fought this young kid called Alimi Mustafa in 1983 in the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. And it was at a dinner show, and I knocked him out, and he slipped into a coma, and he died. And it was, I didn't want to box anymore. It was actually 1982, not 83. And I just thought, if I can do this to somebody, I don't want to do this anymore. And I stopped for 5 months. And Barney Yusuf, my manager, would ring me every 3 weeks and say, well, how are you feeling? Do you want to continue? I always said, no, no, no. And then, of course, my wife was pregnant, and I, just been married at the end of 81. She was doing a hairdressing job. I committed my whole life to boxing. I put all my eggs in one basket, if you like. And I said to myself, look, I've got to carry on. I've got to carry on. And what I'm going to do is that if I win the title, if I win what I hope I win, or I believe I can win, I'm going to dedicate it to him. And that's what I did. And so Harry Carpenter, who was the great Harry Carpenter from the BBC, was able to articulate what I said through my sort of moping and crying, and was able to articulate what I wanted to say. And to the, as I say, almost 19 million people that watched on the television. So they were enraptured with it. It meant a lot to me to remember that young man at the highest point of my career and my life. And so I remembered him, and I'll never forget him. And of course, the standards of medical care in boxing has improved tremendously. I was involved in I started the Professional Boxers associated with a couple of like-minded ex-fighters. And, the one thing we did was we pushed for new and higher standards in medical practice and better responses, and the nearest neurosurgical hospital being aware of it. So, we very much were involved in that, and raising the standards and improving things. But, Smithy and Lee, in this business, if you're willing to get involved in boxing and do it right, and put all your efforts and strengths into it, you must be prepared to accept the consequences, because
you don't play boxing, as I've
you
said
do
for
not,
years.
you do not play boxing, and
No.
it's
Right.
a very, very serious business. It's an amazing sport, and it will always be the best sport in the world. There's no question about it. The amount of adrenaline that not just fighters but fans can get from that, and people watching on telly and everything else.
Yeah.
You live it and breathe it and feel it. But it's.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. We're going to take one last break, and we're going to come back. And if I don't let Lee get in a couple of final questions to you,
Yes.
he's going to turn very unfriendly.
Okay.
And what happens is his
It's going to
hair
turn
changes.
the color of your T-shirt.
His hair changes colors when he gets unfriendly. One last break, back with more of Barry McGuigan in this corner of the podcast. We'll be right back. Back in this corner of the podcast with Hall of Famer, former featherweight champion of the world, the Clones Cyclone, Barry McGuigan. Lee, I know you got some final questions.
Yeah, after
You know what I was going to say to you, Lee? Should
Yes.
I answer these questions in a more succinct way?
I would
That's your
never,
choice.
I would never question your sagation, perspication, and sapience and try to insinuate to go fast. I would never do that with a cyclone.
All right. That's
Absolute
fine.
Cyclones by themselves are fast enough.
Yes,
So
indeed.
there you go. After winning the title from Pedrosa, you registered 2 successful defenses against Bernard Taylor and Danilo Cabrera. And then you were ready to come to the United States and take part in a card called the Triple Hitter that included 2 of the 4 Kings. Thomas Hearns fought Mark Nadal, and Roberto Duran faced Robbie Sims.
Yeah.
Duran was one of your idols.
Yes.
What was it like meeting him?
Oh, he was just a phenomenal guy, and I loved him. And as you might imagine, Lee and Smithy, I've met him 100 times since, and he does quite a bit of speaking over here. He has as we used to call him, an interrupter, an interpreter, helping him. But he's very popular over here, and there's a lot of speaking in the north of the country, north of the UK. But Duran was just such a memorable time, and I know it was an unhappy end to it because it was the circumstances. The heat was just phenomenal, and I just melted. But still, that experience of traveling around, and we done this whistle stop tour of America to promote the fight, and he was just so funny, and it was such a great experience to spend time with him. And he's an amazing fighter, and I called my 2 German shepherds after him. I think he was so thrilled that I called my 2 German shepherds. They were at different times. Obviously, they were with us, and they've all since passed on. But I called them Duran. So Duran is a big name in the McGuigan house over here. I can tell you this, and he's an amazing, phenomenal character.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, your part of the triple hitter was your fight with Stevie Cruz.
Correct. Yeah.
And your fight was the only one of the 3 that took place entirely in daylight. And of course, it was a brutal day, 110 degrees, low humidity. You had some very serious concerns about fighting during that time of day.
Yeah.
And eventually they came to pass.
Yeah.
Could you describe just the cauldron that you were fighting in?
Well, I mean, it's hard to imagine what it's like. When you open the oven after cooking food, and this hot air sort of comes out around you, and you sort of waft it away, and then you take the food out and you close the oven. Well, that's what it was like. That's what it felt like. You're not just. It's not just coming at you. You're in it. You're in the middle of it, and it's all around you. And sure, my opponent had to endure the same situation, but he was from San Antonio in Texas, and he was used to that, and he was familiar with that sort of temperature. And no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't cope with those sort of conditions. Mm-hmm. And so invariably I ran out of gas, and he was clever too. Let's be honest, Cruz was smart, and he waited on me, and I initiated everything, and I put all my energy into it, and I ran out of gas, and it's as simple as that. And I was knocked down twice in the last round. Not from, I was hurt early in the fatigue, but I was absolutely frazzled. I was exhausted in the last sort of 4-5 rounds of the fight, and I couldn't get anything. Sometimes you're able to recycle and have a round off a box or whatever, get on your toes or whatever, but I couldn't get anything back. I couldn't get my energy back. And as I say, nothing against Stevie Cruz. It wasn't he just took the opportunity that arose for him, and he was there at the right time, and I just was there at the wrong time, and that was just the way it was. And me and my manager fell out, but that was about my purse, and it was something I don't really want to get into. But we fell out over the money, and it was nothing to do with the fight. But in hindsight, it was stupid. It was so stupid to fight outside in those conditions, and White is an ace of spades, in those sort of conditions. Silly, stupid things. But you make mistakes in your life. And so anyway, because of the financial thing, Barney and I fell out, and then I was out, and we were in court for a couple of years, or back and forth, and eventually went to court, and then it was settled. And then I moved from Ireland to England because I turned over with Frank Warren. I'd done the last part of my career with him. And then I had another 4 fights. I won 3 by knockout, and I lost the last one against Jim McDonald on a cut eye. The fight hadn't started, and I got a very nasty cut. And I had cut in the 4 times I'd fought. I cut every single time. They weren't serious cuts, but they were all starting to have a wear and tear on me as a fighter. My dad had passed away. I had moved from Ireland to England, and things were just not the same, and I was not the same, and I felt that it was time to stop. And so I got out, and you were
only 28 at the time.
I was 28 years old. That's all. Yeah, but I mean, but here's the thing. There's no set age, Lee and Smithy, for anybody. A guy can be done at 26 or 27. Depends what way they fight. It depends what their mentality is like. It depends, more than likely it's because of the way you fight. I fought relentlessly. I gave, and I know I can look back on my career and say I could not have put another ounce of effort into what I did. I gave everything I had, and I, to the point where, I was really, really, I tried and busted it. I busted a gut. I got the very best out of myself, and I had a good personality, and I was good with people, and I had phenomenal support, and I won the BBC Sports Personality of the Year in 1985, the year I won the world title. I won Fight of the Year. It was a phenomenal year for me. And although it was only a short span as champion, I know in another time I could have held the title for considerably longer. And what's more, I believe 100% that I could have gone and won the super featherweight title too. But it just wasn't to be, and the circumstances just didn't work out for me. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to hang around here. I'm not going to be one of these guys that end up blowing bubbles and, going on too long and, ending up being punchy. I'm not going to do that.
The fact that you made the damn decision when you did and how you did is why you have been able to do all that you've done since then in boxing, training fighters, broadcaster, everything you've done, and with Shane and with everything you've done. Believe me, I host the International Boxing Hall of Fame.
Yes. You do that every year, Smithy.
Every year, yeah. In fact, and heading there again in just a few weeks.
Couple of weeks. That's right.
And I see the damage these guys that had careers like yours can't articulate those careers like you did.
Thank you very much.
I can tell that that you don't have any regrets, and it's great.
No.
And what
And
you
know,
did.
and you know something, Smitty, that has always been to the forefront of my mind. I said I had 105 amateur fights. I only lost about 2 or 3 senior fights as a senior boxer. I lost 3 or 4 as a juvenile boxer, and I went straight from the juveniles, as I mentioned to you earlier, went in and won the Ulster Seniors at the age of 16. So I went straight into the senior game. I lost 3 very, very important fights that which forced me to say, look, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not for me. Guys can outpoint me by running away and getting ropey decisions, and I'm not going to hang around to have 5 guys around the ring who don't know me from a hole in the ground and are already predisposed to crooked decisions. So I'm not going to put my faith in them anymore. I'm going to get out and get into professional boxing because I know I'm tough enough to do it. I know my stamina, my heart rate was only like 37 or 40 beats. So I had an incredible stamina, and I could really bang, and I knew that I could become a champion. But then the most important thing after that was I'm going to get out quickly, and I'm not going to hang around, and I'm not going to be, slurring my speech and, walking into walls and just not being myself again. When I'm now 65 years old, I'd like to think I'm lucid and coherent, and I speak well, and I understand. I have a great relationship with my wife and my children. And, I'm involved in the sport, and Shane is a phenomenal young coach, and you've got the unified or the undisputed super British or world super bantamweight champion, Ellie Scotney, with Caroline Dubois, the world lightweight champion. We've got Chris Billam-Smith, who's fighting for, and this is all his. So I go in every couple of days, and I'm a bit of a sage, and I give the kids a bit of advice, and they come up and they talk to me, and they want to know, how did you do? How did you cope with this? And I'm very free and very open with them. And it's a fantastic gym. It's packed full of really talented guys coming down to spar, and then we travel to other gyms to spar. But mostly they come to us, and it's great to be involved in the sport. I've been writing about boxing since with the Daily Mirror for the last 35 years, and I write a column every week. It's out on a Friday on the internet, and then in the paper on Saturday. But that's not going to last much longer because I don't think people are going to buy papers anymore. It's just everything's read online.
I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to take Lee's last question, and then I have one more to put an Irish bow on this. 2005, you get the call from Ed Brophy in the Hall of Fame. What did that mean to you? Oh
my God, that was one of the greatest days of my life, to be part of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I was inducted the same year for the World Boxing Hall of Fame, but that's no longer. But the International Boxing Hall of Fame, that is the real McCoy. And being involved, people, my grandchildren and my great grandchildren and my great grandchildren can look back and say, this kid was in this. My great granddad was in the Hall of Fame.
How does Barry McGuigan want to be remembered as a fighter, but more importantly, as a man? I
would like to be remembered as a decent guy, a good guy, a good person. And the criteria for that means something different to everybody. So I'd like to be remembered as a decent fella and a kid that could really fight.
And you certainly were that. We want to thank you for taking the time to join us, and hopefully what I'm going to do is put this couple of deals together that I'm working on, and you'll have to bear with me again. We'll have to do this again on my television show, but It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we really appreciate it.
Well, it's a thrill, Smithy. It was just fantastic because I've been following you for years. We met at the Hall of Fame. All those. It was 2005. Can you believe that 21 years have gone by?
Yeah.
And you too, Lee. What a pleasure to talk to you both. I know I'm aware of your show. When I got the call, I went, Jesus, are you joking me? I'd love to come on and do this. So love to talk to you anytime. You must get Shane on sometime. He's
We will.
phenomenal young talent. 9 world champions he's trained already, and he's only 36 years old. So he's he's got a load of talent in the gym. And it's exciting times at the moment. So fingers crossed, and continued success with your podcast, guys. And thank you most sincerely for having me on.
Remember, Ireland, leave the fighting to McGuigan. One final break, and we'll come back and wrap it up right after this. Back in this corner, back to wrap things up, put a bow on this Irish extravaganza. Great stuff there with Barry McGuigan.
Yeah, real fun conversation. It was great to meet him and to talk with him.
You know, we had planned to have a little bit more time on this segment where I know you wanted to honor some of the legendary Irish pugilists, and I don't know what kind of categorization you have of it, but take it away.
You know, these are just great Irish fighters that came to mind when you asked me to name them. And of
I know
course,
I better be on this damn list. I know that.
Well, anyway, one of the first names that popped into my mind was actually our other guest for today, Wayne McCullough. He was a 1992 Olympic silver medalist. He was WBC bantamweight champion, made a couple defenses, fought all the really great fighters of his era, and he really honored himself in the process, win or lose. And of course, me working with CompuBox, he is the all-time record holder for most punches thrown in a single round in CompuBox history. He threw 245 punches, so he really lived up to his nickname of the Pocket Rocket. And other names that came to mind, Jimmy McLarnin. He was a 2-time welterweight champion. He was known as the original baby-faced assassin. He was exceptionally skilled. He fought the best of his era multiple times. Hall of Famer, absolutely. Another name is Mike Mateague. He won the light heavyweight championship, and guess the circumstances by which he won the championship. He won it on St. Patrick's Day in Dublin against Battling Siki. And during his career, he defeated the likes of Tommy Loughran and young Stribling, Mickey Walker. I think he had a victory over Harry Greb and Tiger Flowers. That's a heck of a resume. Rennie Monaghan. He was the undisputed flyweight champion during the 1940s, and he was known for serenading the crowd with the song When Irish Eyes Are Smiling following his fights. And I believe he did that win or lose. And his name Rinty came from his love of dogs. He often brought strays home, and it led his grandmother to call him Rin Tin Tin, which was eventually shortened to Rinty. Another name was Steve Collins. He's the Celtic Warrior. He won titles at 160 and 168. He beat Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn twice each, and he retired as world champion after making 7 successful defenses. And then there's Carl Frampton, actually. Carl Frampton. He's the first fighter from Northern Ireland to win titles in multiple weight classes. Exceptional technical skills. He could really hit as well. And then there's Katie Taylor, one of the greatest fighters ever to come out of Ireland. She was an Olympic gold medalist. Her mother was one of the first female boxing judges. Her father was an Irish senior light heavyweight champion. She was an undisputed champion as a pro in 2 weight classes. and she holds 3 wins over Amanda Serrano. But she is mostly known as a pioneer of the women's game. She really sparked the revolution that we're still going through today.
And we will someday soon, hopefully sooner than later, see her in Canastota, because she certainly will be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, as was our very special guest. We want to thank him again, Barry McGuigan. So long, everybody.